I saw a still of it, and I saw.
Did she continue afterwards? Or did that end the
There's some video on CNN, or is there a picture? I think it's a still of them wiping the.
I was just going to say, how much did that set
Somebody
you
wiping it
back?
off. And they interviewed the guy.
Well, you had to go with the dog, didn't you?
I'm assuming he faced criminal charges.
Yeah, he was
I'll show
arrested.
you the old one.
Disturbing the peace.
I drop them off every morning on my way to work, pick them up on the way home. It was day school for 3
I'm
weeks.
basically I'm not a big fan of the pie in the face or spitting in the face. All that stuff I basically view as assault of
Yeah.
whoever the public figure is.
This is the goofy
Pack your
picture
can
I used to have.
No, I'm totally
That's my
with
screen
you.
back.
Even if it's whipped cream or whatever, you have no right to do that to someone else.
But then I did the much more.
And in fact, if someone was coming at me and I saw him
My friend
quickly
sends his
enough, I would
basset
tap
down
him.
to those polka dogs and
Or I'd just turn around and grab the pie and throw it back right back on. But in almost every case, they wind up getting arrested.
Really?
And it's disturbing the peace. Oftentimes, a celebrity like that says, "Oh, forget it."
Right. That's probably the best way out. You don't have to come back and testify. Damn thing.
Well, we went to visit some friends in Pittsburgh, and they lived near the store. They went on all these way to big walks. She just,
Basically makes a criminal out of you.
well, this was at night, this was bad.
Did you
but she
arrest him?
looks, I
Where'd you
mean,
get her?
The Nationals are on. I forgot it's the day.
So what you
she
been
looks
doing?
like
You know, she was just going to sleep every night. I mean, it's not an abusive, believe me.
The Nationals are playing today.
Don't phone me in, don't phone me in.
Channel 17 or Channel 18, something like
no,
that.
I just.
Yeah, well, you were able to watch the
As I said,
NCAA's on.
alien observer.
You just need to do a little more channel
Like
search.
that as well.
Well,
Figure out where it is.
People all go on the
Or the alternative. Go to the game. So you do. Because you have a return, right?
How you been doing?
Doing stuff down
my sister had a cat.
We used to have cats. We had, back we had as many as 3 cats. Well, when we had a dog.
And you were stuck.
Now we're down to just.
Chinese circles.
Well, that's what my sister had for like 10 years, the Siamese.
Taking a back seat.
How's your mama?
But basically, okay.
I know it's been a while since we gathered here, so I'm going to remind you about cell phones,
What are they?
pagers, Blackberries, camera speakers, space heaters,
No blueberries?
Bureau phone, Crackberries.
Crackberries. Dingleberries.
Terry?
Charlie, is this the new look, the beard?
Down at this end, it's been so long, the last time we had a meeting, we didn't have a baseball team.
Beach shaving.
And we had a different coach.
Good, Barbara.
He wouldn't do me any good to try. Let's try to go up here. They get just enough that it would look about like that in front of a TV camera.
Shaving is overrated. There's a new, I tried that, the last time I tried one of those electrics was almost 10 years ago. Apparently the new one. Saved. I've got one. John Warner Saved. What is it called? It's pretty good. Is that what you've got, Charlie?
No, actually, I was, my daddy, my late daddy-in-law owned it. It's not the thing that you talk about. But it's all right. Thing is, it takes just as much time to do that as it does to shave yourself, you know,
You're late.
shave yourself. And by the end of the day, you're better off having shaved
4.5
with a razor.
Tick, tick, tick.
It feels so much cleaner.
Unless you,
If you don't still have a number.
Well, I couldn't do that because my aim's like that.
Losing out there. Still is a little bit. The house is still fall apart.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, water's like.
Well,
Yeah.
until
We get
the
you a
Rita
briefing,
comes
we
here.
probably get better answers out of you.
Probably.
Oh, we do.
you mean, he didn't want to come in and extend his wheel?
Only because of the ripple effect. Yeah, it makes more noise.
Throw a little fresh meat into the tip. So Charlie, did you get your back straightened down? I see you're not riding that horse anymore.
Some of the alarms wasn't worse.
Better?
I think that's just,
It's a bitch to grow old, isn't it?
I'll tell you, I'm supposed to go, and I've been planning on going, and still planning on going, but
You're looking for a way out?
occasionally
well, I
when
mean,
it's
it's a
not
matter
I
of,
forget it. Like I forget it.
I can be in a car. 10 o'clock tonight?
Well, don't write back down anywhere, right?
Right.
No, you don't want to be reminded.
Or build someplace for them to build somewhere else. Big, trying to consult, I mean, there's plenty of real estate.
Where are
What speech?
Oh, right.
Infrastructure.
We go all the time, yeah, mostly in the off season because it's better, there's no crowds, you know. We eat at a great restaurant, it's called Fish On. You ever been there?
That place is awesome.
Is it?
Oh, yeah, that's just, it's off the beaten path.
Right, right.
Been there since-
I know.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I mean.
Good.
And it's undiscovered.
I think the he's directing
All right.
he brought the restaurant out with him to open up that other
Oh, you're not gonna get out here. It's
and left. Yeah, that's right, that time I got. Absolute shit.
Are you gonna go next week? You should come over to the house if you're gonna be out there next week.
No, next weekend I definitely won't be. Next weekend soccer.
This guy next. He's new to this side. What's that verb?
Yeah, it's right off the main drag there, where Country Club Drive.
Mexico, I really don't hang out. We go back to
Cool vacation time.
What's he doing? Oh,
Just came back with that guy.
yeah, I know. I know it.
Yeah, it's gonna go. My wife
Is he playing? He's probably standing at tides anyway.
So we go with
I bet he stands at tides.
hang out.
I'm sure he's
Actually,
playing.
the tides in it.
But if you take your wife, you don't do that. As soon as you took his wife, you probably stay the week before again.
Well, the tides.
Yeah, but he's playing up in Williamsburg. He wants to play the Golden Horseshoe.
last night.
Yeah.
Osprey or anything.
Williamsburg is a neat experience if you haven't done it.
You know, I was down at the NATO meeting out in Marietta.
Yes.
Well, no, it wasn't NATO. Well, maybe NATO has it. Down there, he had the first,
Walking along the river.
They just drive.
Colorado River.
Latin America.
Happened upon Bob Marley reggae.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, I lived down in that area for 4 years.
There was a large
Worked over in
festival
Norfolk,
for
New Hampshire,
dinosaurs.
local TV. And
That's
so,
where the tides in. Hampton.
No, it was one of those
Hampton,
things
yeah.
that people have to
You don't want to go.
around in.
In fact, Hampton does not have golf courses that are
But its
comparable.
head was way out into the
Some of the tides in it, although maybe it's just, maybe it's not, maybe it's just the tides in itself is nice.
Well, I haven't played the Golden Horseshoe, which is supposed to be very good, but I have played Williamsburg. And it is. It's the first one. And there's one over at James River Country Club over in Portsmouth. Hampton courses when I was there, sort of.
familiar. The one I know is
Yeah.
you don't walk. What's the
I haven't played in ages. I used to. Yeah, it's always walked.
They have Dr. Pepper. I played swing at the Dublin, Texas.
Skied well field.
Instead of
So Charlie, when I was playing golf, I was still running 5 miles.
the one plant that makes Dr. Pepper
And, you know,
cane sugar.
walking 18 holes of golf is recreational.
It tastes, it's instead of.
I would probably, I don't know whether I'd ride it or not. It's probably artificial sugar. But I haven't played golf.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
It takes a half a day to play a round of golf. And I don't have a half a day. I don't like it. Wander around the golf.
If you're somebody who doesn't like Dr. Pepper,
Too many
But if
things.
you do it in color, you do it.
Yeah. Too many things that need to be done.
It's still an emerging
One people drink Dr. Pepper daily for a
Well,
while.
that's why I stopped playing when I came out to DC.
10 to 12
When I lived down in
years,
Norfolk,
you know,
I could play.
It's hard
I go down to Ocean View, which is a nice little public course. It was, the rough was kept fairly clean, and you could play 18 holes in a couple hours, 3 hours on the most. But particularly if you play during the week.
Born in Michigan.
Mammy is
Around a lot.
When I was anchoring 11 o'clock noon, I didn't go to work until 2 o'clock or so. So I get up in the morning, go over to the golf course, play 9 or 18 holes, and come in, grab a shower, go to work. And it worked out very nice. But you know, but you know, up here, you get a public course, and they're busy, and you got guys in front of you who take 15 minutes to line up a putt and they miss it by 6 feet. It's one thing to do what Tiger Woods did with a putt. It's another thing altogether to take all that time and then just shank the damn thing. And when I was down there, we had a regular foursome. We had half a dozen guys who always had the foursome. And
second,
we could always get at least 1 or 2 other people during the week. No obligation. It was a lot of fun. I used to play a lot of tennis and a lot of golf.
I mean, it's amazing you know how people can really work it. Having said that, boy, it demands so much. I mean, it's a learning process.
No, there wasn't one.
Go around and listen to but I could see how people really got into it, which is
It can be a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
you really do. Okay,
No, we're
Given my brothers, I think I'd rather play tennis than
When
I
I
hit
walked
golf.
in, 247, Rita wasn't even in.
Because, you know, you can run out, play a couple sets of golf, grab a shower and go. A lot of times we go to the club and play a couple sets of tennis, hit the pool. You get nice and hot, so you hit the pool, swim through 4 laps.
remember that magazine I said
It's a nice way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
I just had to order one. Oh, that's good. So I'll see what it's like when it arrives. So you thought I was not being productive last week?
3:45 is
Proven wrong.
Clearly, he must have breaking news, right? That's why he's waiting for that.
Look into the neighborhood.
Support within the place.
I, not to my knowledge,
who replaced him? Didn't he change places? Who? Rodriguez.
Did he change places with?
Who replaced Rodriguez?
I can say.
Has he been up yet?
Oh, that's good. That's interesting. I wonder if he's coming out tonight.
I wonder if somebody doesn't know.
In a rare break of tradition, our people begged and asked us to try to forgive
I'm afraid our people in Baghdad.
Normally you say Saturday rock and our people are Baghdad.
Second rate.
Hang on.
Oh, you see the baseball? You see the baseball?
For a long time this morning, I was getting better information on this side of the Atlantic than they were
Even though they've said
Company in Northern Virginia, but it's actually a Canadian company.
I'm sure they do.
Everybody thought it was Washington.
Normally I would.
Well, it's because that section is on the track, and they move it around into another position for soccer. So those stands are sitting on the main railroad.
He's still in there.
Rails. So that's why it bounces. You can just stick it up there. But they ought to design that.
Well, they must have had some incriminating
Like watching that thing, like, Ivy is really
Not just that one. Others too.
I'm sure you get that on a foil before the camera rusted and dust.
They left the at least.
Actually, that's unfair. I bet you could get it with
It all depends on whether they wanted it out or not. If they wanted it out, you get it pretty quick. All sorts of ways to not get it out.
Well, one of the things that happens is not as conclusive.
Yeah.
Enjoy the game.
Unless CBS. But if CBS hadn't seen those films, they would.
I've never done television. But I got it all
Apparently the indictment of him is that he was always there.
There's a guy walking around like that.
The video showed him there with things happening.
So with Ouija, he was always there.
Ouija? Jeez. How long has Ouija been dead?
Have you ever seen that picture of the shot of just a street corner and you just have to be in the right place at the right time when a car comes up? Before, during, and after the first view.
I cut me perfect to the other presentation, and then I moved like where they had to be. Yeah, with approval, but I mean, this was a seminar.
Yeah, don't wait till the bubble bursts. Buy it now while the prices are high.
So that was kind of fun. This was my first one. I didn't get paid for the people from New York.
The Red Sox, I did well for the Red Sox.
I'll be the first one. Once you get past that, man, I mean, that's all.
Whether they're right, you should do it once you come. Yeah. Of course, it's easy. Something like this. I would take my curious question from you.
Pretty much, that's my
Put out a couple. Well, I want to assume that you would do it. Especially, I mean, being a tech. Really, it's, you know. I want to assume that the preponderance of computer expertise is not down there, it's not within his
I would be interested, not for the 2 weeks away.
What's the score?
Since I have to take vacation time,
Looks like the, what, Braves or
I
Nats?
wouldn't be able to do 3 sessions in a year because that would eat up all my time. But I
That's a bit, yes. Come on, Ryan.
but I don't like to be away from her anyway. But I do know a guy who lives in London who does that sort of for a living. Yeah. But I can't think of his name. Yeah, he's catching straight.
And I were on base. Andrew drove, so they're outside the gap.
About his TV experience. But he has a friend. He's living in London because his wife has a job there. He's an American. He's run for us in Afghanistan. And then when I was London editor, I sent him to Baghdad, I think twice, to take vacations. His training so whoever he worked out their contact. I think he did something in Africa. Yeah, that's what he thinks.
Oh, I see.
That's for training journalists. But I don't think, I mean, I was just always sort of trying to get a piece of his side.
Free up $5 million. Or they would say, oh, no, we can't do
State Senate today. Well, you've got to remember that this is South Carolina here, and we don't, we have criminal laws.
Apparently, he canceled a law,
Or refused to bring up a law that banned cockfighting and, or passed one that banned cockfighting and banned one that passed domestic abuse. And he jammed it, and he said, well, you trying to mix those two up, and you can't mix those two up. Well, you know, you didn't, well, no, you don't understand. You don't understand the way, this is South Carolina.
And he got the thing, it was like,
Oh, boy.
That's what Dan rather does.
Well, they must have, unfortunately, the fire churches see them. That's the problem here. You must be on the hood preserving your
image that you might catch it.
Yeah, wouldn't want to do that.
he's not even acting assistant.
It's actually PDA.
His title is acting.
PDASD, Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense.
What?
Acting Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense. Public Affairs. There he is, speaking of.
We're all warmed up now.
You are. Maybe I should leave. Good afternoon. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got delayed doing some other things, but I'm very happy to join you this afternoon. It's been a few weeks. We were traveling last week, so I just didn't have the opportunity. And I don't have any particularly opening comment. I would like to express condolences to the individuals who were, to the families of the individuals who were involved in the helicopter crash that occurred in Iraq. There's still a lot we don't know about what happened there, but we do offer our condolences to those families involved. And with that, I'd be happy to just go to some questions.
Now,
Sir.
could you tell us about the Americans on the helicopter, who they work for, and whether the Pentagon had anything to do with employing those people on the helicopter? I understand did they work for Blackwater? Or?
It's my understanding that that company has put out a statement to that effect. We're still learning some details. There's going to be an investigation by the Iraqi civil authorities, civil aviation authorities, that the multinational force will assist with. I'm not particularly. I think the number was something on the order of 6, but I would be careful with those reports just because I think they'll go in and investigate and learn more in the immediate future, and then learn as far as causes in the longer term future. But there will be an investigation by Iraqi civil authorities, and we'll assist in that investigation. And there's no early indications as to what happened, how it crashed.
Well, because I understand the U.S. military is saying probably an RPG, and the Bulgarian defense minister is saying a missile, of course, which could be anything.
Apparently, the Bulgarian Ministry of Defense has made a comment to that effect. I'm not aware that we have not made any official assessments on that, and I don't believe that there's been any official statements to that effect coming out of the theater from U.S. military.
By a missile, it could mean anything from an RPG to an actual
I
missile.
wouldn't want to speculate. I know apparently the Bulgarian Defense Ministry has made a comment to the effect that they believed it was shot down, but I think we just don't know that, and we're not in a position to make any independent assessment of that yet, nor are Iraqi civil authorities, as I understand it.
Larry, can you sort out this discrepancy in figures that the Iraqi government is saying more than 50 people were found in the Tigris River, and most of the people we've talked to have numbers that are quite different from that, if any at all. What happened and why there's such a difference in the numbers?
First of all, why there's a difference is, I can't say why there's a difference, but I can say that those kinds of differences aren't surprising. People are gathering their own information. We now have an Iraqi government that has its own sources of information, that has its own ability to develop understanding of things that happen. We don't have any indications that can corroborate the specific numbers involved. Apparently there have been some number of individuals discovered in this stadium, the causes of their death, the time of their death, the type of what they were doing, and whether they were security forces or not remain in question. There have been reports all across the map on that. I don't believe MNFI has said anything yet, because MNFI has no independent ability to validate what is coming out of the Iraqi government. So
Why don't they have?
because it's a government that's doing its own investigation into what they know, and we're working closely with them. But it's we should start to expect this in the sense that we will not be necessarily, when I say we, the multinational force is not necessarily going to be the first or best source of information as we go forward in Iraq, because there's now an Iraqi government with police and with security forces and with intelligence apparatus, and we're going to some extent, like we are in other countries, be dependent on information that we learn from the Iraqi government or in conjunction with the Iraqi government. And at the moment, we just have not learned anything independent.
Wait, let's go back. You said the stadium. How about the ones that were found in the river?
It's not clear to me that we aren't. There's more about this that we don't know than what we know, and what we know is mostly what we're hearing from the Iraqi government. So we have made no independent assessment of whether there's a difference between the reports that President Talabani made with respect to the river and what we understand is the presence of some corpses at the stadium. So we'll let this sort itself out, and we'll provide such information as we're able to, and mostly what we're providing will be coming from the theater, unfortunately.
Excuse me, just a second. With all the intel stuff that you have, with all the ability to look down and see things, you're not seeing 50 bodies in the river? You're not seeing? Any bodies in the river?
We're seeing nothing at the moment. What we're doing is reporting to the best of our understanding what the Iraqi government understands to be the situation. And as that gets clarified, we'll offer additional information. But at the moment, this kind of uncertainty is something we should expect, because, as I said, the Iraqi government is the lead on this kind of activity. They're trying to understand it better themselves. Obviously, there's going to be clarifications come out as they learn more, and we'll do our best to provide that information.
You don't want to say whether you believe they're accurate or not, though.
I'm in no position to have a judgment on that. I just simply cannot.
Larry, nonetheless, what does the Pentagon and the Defense Department make of the uptick in violence and the number of attacks over the last week to 2 weeks or so? What do you think is the cause of this, and do you have any ability to quantify the rise in violence now compared to perhaps right after the election?
A lot of questions there. What we've seen throughout the period of really for the last 2 years is these attacks and the numbers of attacks fluctuate from one period to another. And so it's difficult. I wouldn't want to try and say that there's a trend as a result of a week or two of data. What we do know is that we still, in terms of total weekly attacks, are below the number that occurred about a year from, in other words, from this point until the sovereignty transfer, to take one baseline. So in the terms of the total average weekly attacks now versus the period just prior to the transfer of sovereignty, we're below that level. We're below the level that occurred just from the transfer of sovereignty to the elections. We're below the level that occurred from the elections until, say, mid-February. But it is a fact that in the last week or two there's been an uptick. So it's difficult to see whether that's a trend or whether it's nobody denies that there's been a slight increase in the violence in the last week or two.
Do you have any view at this point, or are you trying to figure out even what to attribute it to? Do you have any?
I don't know that our commanders have made any assessment. I would say this: the commanders. We were there last week. The secretary visited with some of the commanders. There isn't a commander in Iraq that, I would say this: every commander that we've talked to in Iraq during that trip and subsequent to that believes that, generally speaking, the development of the security forces, of the Iraqi security forces, is proceeding in an effective and appropriate fashion. Their understanding, the commander's understanding of the nature of the enemy is getting better all the time because intelligence is getting better. Their ability to interdict attacks is getting more refined as they get better intelligence. So I would say that if you want to look at trends, I think the commanders feel that in terms of our ability to understand this enemy and interrupt the enemy, and the Iraqi security forces' capacity against that enemy is getting better all the time. Now, with that said, we know that this is an enemy that is running out of time with respect to an Iraqi government. It will soon be attacks on an Iraqi government that Iraqis understand more than anything else. I think we're at that point, actually, that they see this as attacks on Iraqis, not on the coalition. There's enough indication, including the elections, but even subsequent to the elections, that suggests that Iraqis themselves are starting to take action against potential attacks by providing more information, by being willing to interrupt attacks. We saw Iraqi security forces who did that on the day of the election, for example. So there's a sense of, there may be a sense that the attackers recognize that they are increasingly being identified as people who are against what most Iraqis want, and so there will be a desire to grab headlines with more spectacular attacks. That's possible, and that's something that people think may be going on. There's a growing number of Iraqi security forces, so that presents more targets for the attackers. So there's a lot of factors. I don't think that anybody could indicate what the basis for the uptick is, nor can they determine. I haven't heard any commanders try and give an assessment of whether they think it's a trend or whether it's something that they're focused on and paying attention to.
Larry, you talked about possibly more spectacular attacks. There was a somewhat spectacular, although ineffective, attack against a Marine outpost on the Syrian border last week involving a fire truck laden with explosives. Can you tell us anything about what happened in that incident, what happened in that, and what it says about?
I don't have any. I believe MNFI put something out at the time as to what they knew, and we don't have anything beyond that in terms of the details of the incident.
It appeared to be a very sophisticated attack that involved several suicide bombers trying to breach the perimeter, and it was, as I said, it was unsuccessful. But like the attack on the Abu Ghraib prison, what did the prison attack, this one, what does that say about what's happening with the insurgency that we've seen those kinds of attacks?
One can speculate. The commanders wonder whether there's they're marshaling their dwindling capacity on being able to conduct these kinds of what appear to be better coordinated attacks, but more spectacular and perhaps fewer more spectacular attacks. That's speculation, but the fact is that the security forces and coalition are developing some capacity to interrupt these things or to stop them before they cause real damage. But again, that doesn't make anybody sanguine. I mean, there's still the Iraqi government as well as the commanders are working very hard to make sure that they can truly understand, is there something more here than that we need? But as I said, the impression one gets by talking to the commanders is that they generally feel that their trend is greater sense of desperation, to be sure, more spectacular capacity, and we've seen this. We saw this in the car bombing in Hilla, for example, and other types of attacks that we've talked about. And the Abu Ghraib, what appeared to be something of a coordinated attack. We're keeping our eye on it, and the commanders are mindful of that. But as I said, there isn't a commander over there who doesn't think we're making progress, and that the progress is generally positive, and that the Iraqi security forces in particular are getting better and better all the time. So.
Larry, on that
There have
helicopter,
been some recent instances where the Iraqi government, different leaders came out and came to exaggerate some of the things that they're finding. Do you feel like this is purposeful in some way to
The Iraqi government?
to increase the sectarian tension between the different sects, the Shiites and the Sunnis? Do you think that this has increased somehow the tension between the different people?
Here's my impression, and again, we met with the Iraqi leaders last week. My impression is that the Iraqi leadership across the board, and we met with the Prime Minister, we met with the outgoing Prime Minister, we met with the Prime Minister designate, I should say, the outgoing Prime Minister, the President, that the trends are towards unity and not dissension, that they understand the importance of pulling in disparate forces, disparate factions, minorities, that they find that a very important component of the next 6 or 8 months as they do the constitutional development, the constitutional referendum, and the election. So I have no reason to see it the way that you've described it. And I have plenty of reason to see it as the Iraqi leadership trying to do what it's been doing very well so far, which is keep the forces pointed inward, keep the outreach active, and particularly toward minorities, bringing in the Shiite leadership, or I should say the Sunni leaders themselves, trying to become part of this, recognizing that they didn't participate in the election as well as they might have done, and wanting to catch up.
What role does the U.S. military play in the information? You touched on it there. You're stepping back as far as the announcements of different events coming from the Iraqis and not MNFI.
Yeah.
But is there a clarification? Is there a confirmation that we should be looking for the U.S. military and all of these different major
No, and that's a
announcements?
good question, by the way, and I don't know. I mean, we're going to kind of find our way as we move forward. There's a very good relationship between the Iraqi government, as there has been, and the coalition commanders. There's a strong desire, both in the country as well as in the region, to let the Iraqi government determine what is being said publicly, to step back, if you will. When it involves U.S. or coalition forces, obviously we're going to try and be more upfront and open and in front, I should say, with providing the information, because we're going to be more capable of providing that information. But when it comes to such incidents as what we saw or what may be occurring in this stadium, we're going to necessarily be at a bit of a disadvantage on information, because it's the Iraqi government that we're deferring to, as it should be.
Let's go back to the violence issue in Iraq. You said that the number of attacks is below the level. Could you tell me what level are you talking about, the U.S. level or the Iraqi level?
Well, we maintain a database, the commanders do, on the number of attacks in the country.
It's the U.S. level or the Iraqi level?
You mean attacks against U.S. versus attacks against Iraqi?
The
They're
level
doing their best to maintain.
Are you talking about what is this level? I mean,
The commanders there maintain their best assessment of the numbers of attacks inside the country. They don't discriminate, to the best of my understanding, between attacks against Iraqis versus attacks against the United States or coalition forces when it comes to just tallying up the weekly number.
yeah, but don't you think that the number of the Iraqis killed is growing up?
That appears to be the case. I mean, and that's been the case for a little while.
Not day after day?
I don't know about day after day, but it does appear to be the case that, relatively speaking, more Iraqis are being killed than coalition forces, and I think that's with purpose by the insurgency. I mean, they are trying to attack Iraqi elements of progress. I mean, that's their objective. In fact, that's their stated objective. If you go back to the Zarqawi letter, and since then, comments that we've heard or our understanding, they are trying to disrupt the progress of democracy in that country. That's their stated policy.
How many attacks, you said you had statistics, how many attacks a day are you seeing now?
We will give you the statistics we have. The one I'm looking at right now happens to be on a classified document. I don't believe the number is classified, but I'm not at the moment at liberty to do it. I don't. We'll try and provide something. I think last week General Casey or somebody, when we were there, said publicly it was 40 to 50 a day, I should say. And so if people are generally accepting that it's a slightly higher number, then it's slightly higher than that. But I couldn't say that on a daily basis.
Larry?
I'll come back to you, Jim.
Not Iraq question?
Why don't I finish up on Iraq if there's any more, and let's try and get to some other stuff.
It's our understanding that the helicopter that went down did not have chaff, independent of what brought it down.
Did not have what, chaff?
Chaff and any sort of
Countermeasures?
Countermeasures. The Department of Defense is contracting these folks. I mean, are there any sort of restrictions that you have to force these contractors to make sure that the private individuals who are doing work on the behalf of DoD can have the same sort of protections that uniformed service members are getting? I mean, shouldn't somebody who's doing the work of the Department of Defense, same mission, just because they're getting their paycheck from somewhere else, enjoy the same protections that somebody in a uniform would be?
I'm not sure that premise is the basis on which people operate over there. In other words, there are contractors who assume a certain amount of risk. Everybody over there is essentially, I don't say everybody, there are a number of contractors to the U.S. military, to the Department of Defense, to the Department of State, and they assume a certain risk by being over there. And I wouldn't want to characterize exactly what status this particular, obviously we mourn the loss of life, and I'm sure that the contractor would have taken all of the appropriate precautions. I mean, I think that they have the same regard for their employees as we do for our forces. But I can't say that necessarily means they're going to be on the same status. I just don't think that's the case.
Countermeasures, shouldn't they have the same protective gear? Shouldn't they have the same kind of ballistic gear? Shouldn't they have the same?
As I said, I think contractors recognize the environment that they're operating in. It's like that around the world, and they make appropriate adjustments on their own determination. Jim?
Yeah. You said that commanders, or some commanders, believe that what the insurgents are doing are marshaling dwindling capabilities, right, on certain spectacular.
And there's a lot of assumptions in that statement, to be sure.
Exactly. Now, the dwindling capabilities, why do they think that the insurgents' capabilities are dwindling?
Well, I don't know that they think that. I think that they assume that as a result of better intelligence, as a result of having captured an awful lot of these guys or killed a lot of them, and as a result of such indicators as the successful election, as the successful transition to the transitional Iraqi government, that it's a bit of a subjective evaluation. I mean, there's a growing sense of the ability for ordinary Iraqis to go about their lives, recognizing that it's still a very dangerous country, that there are still the possibility for very spectacular, dangerous attacks that will kill Iraqis, that there's a general perception that they're interrupting a lot of attacks, they're interrupting a lot of planning, they're apprehending a lot of people on the basis of better intelligence, and I think that there's a number of assumptions as to whether or not they feel, relatively speaking, the insurgents are more or less capable. And so there's some thoughts that there may be a desire to grab headlines as progress in Iraq overwhelms the ability for the insurgents to give the impression that they're in control, which they are certainly not. It's subjective. There's no easy way to measure that. How about we come back? Go ahead.
Reports today that the Pentagon is recommending that Congress change some statutes in the Uniform Code of Military Justice regarding certain sexual activity. I'm wondering if you can.
I'm sorry.
Why don't we take one more question on Iraq, because I think we've probably talked a lot about it today, and we'll get on to some other things, because I don't have forever. Go ahead, Charlie.
Larry, you mentioned the fraternity and unity, that the promises that the Secretary received last week from the President and the Prime Minister. And yet Talibani said yesterday there might be a delay in forming the new cabinet, apparently because of political infighting. Does that spark any concern here about the Secretary's warnings last week against any delay in the political process? And since he returned, have there been any indications to you all that there might be some attempt to sweep out Ba'athist bureaucrats? And
I don't think I mentioned any promises that the Iraqis made. What I mentioned was an impression. And the Iraqis, the impression that the Iraqis gave, the Iraqi leaders that we met with gave, was uniformly one that they want to be inclusive. They want to pull as many people into the process as possible. They understand the importance of meeting timelines. They understand the importance of competence in the selection of officials and military officers. Now, within that, they're going to be making decisions every day about their own future, understanding what we think would be the most advantageous with respect to the coalition activities in that country, and what we think would be what I described, which is stick to the timelines, make sure that we have a sense of competence as a criteria for people that are being selected for these positions, and remain on the track they're on, which is inclusive. On any given day, week, or month, there's going to be comments coming out of the Iraqi government, and we'll assess those as they come. I have not seen the comments that President Talabani may have made, and I don't know to what extent his comments affect the overall process or some sort of, we need a little more time here, but we'll catch up there. So far, they've done what they said they were going to do. They formed a government. They've more or less come together on general agreements about the nature of the, who's involved and what, that sort of thing. So, go ahead.
Proposed changes to the UCMJ to decriminalize certain sexual activity. Can you, A, provide the rationale for that? Why the Pentagon
I'll do my
is asking
best.
Congress to do that? And also, will this in any way affect Don't Ask, Don't Tell?
No.
And does the Pentagon have a position on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, this piece of legislation to
The Don't Ask, Don't policy is the policy. It's not going to change. There's nobody here contemplating changing it. With respect to what you asked about, I think we have a letter that we may even be able to put out. It's a letter that we sent to the committee, and as I understand it, it has to do with the crime of sodomy. We're trying to harmonize the Uniform Code of Military Justice with some recent case law and some recent decisions in other federal statutes, so that that crime can be properly referred to in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And it gets to the question of consensual versus forcible. But the fact is that that particular act will continue to be a crime under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. It's just got to do with how it's identified in the code. It's more of a legal harmonization with case law than it is anything else.
Continue to be a crime. It's forcible.
No, both. Consensual and forcible. It's just a question of where it fits in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The fact that the act will continue to be a crime in the United States military. That's not changing.
Consensual will continue to be a crime?
Yep. And we'll provide.
I've seen the letter. It doesn't
The letter
say that.
I'm clarifying it so that you can understand what the intent of that letter is.
So you're not decriminalizing
So you're not
consensual
decriminalizing?
sodomy?
No, we're not.
Well,
I'm describing exactly what the intent of that letter is.
what is the change then if you're not decriminalizing?
It's got what the change is what you'll read in the letter, which is what part of the uniform code it's identified in. And it has to do with the question of identifying the crime by name as opposed to identifying it in the context of good order and discipline. And there's a difference in terms of forcible versus consensual. And why don't you get the letter, take a look at the comments I just gave you. The fact is it will continue to be a crime in the United States military.
A question on Iran. This morning, the Iranian media shows that hundreds of Iranians, they are ready to make suicide attacks against American targets. What could you comment on this?
I have no idea. I haven't seen the reference, and obviously we're engaged in a global war on terror. And what are you telling me? What you heard? We're in a global war on terror, and there are terrorists in many countries in the world, including here in the United States, and we're doing our best to engage terrorists across the globe so that we don't have to engage them here in the United States. With respect to specific comments that individuals have made, I just don't have any. I've not seen the comments, and I don't have any particular reaction to it.
Larry, Secretary Rumsfeld has voiced concern from time to time about the level of congressional oversight, that people in the department are constantly having to go to the Hill to answer questions, that it complete reports, that it cuts into their ability to do their jobs. Yesterday, the Senate voted to tell the department that it couldn't retire an aircraft carrier. The Senate has voted in the last week or so to dictate a procedure by which you acquire warships. Is there any concern here that the Congress, I guess in particular the Senate, is moving beyond oversight into micromanagement of the department, and is there any worry about that?
Well, I certainly wouldn't characterize the actions of the United States Senate as you have, but I would just say that the president submitted a budget. The budget had certain proposals with respect to shipbuilding, and it's our desire that the budget that the president submitted be the budget that the Congress passes. And then in the course of the Congress doing its work, there will be amendments, and those amendments will be discussed in conference when the two houses get together, and we'll continue to make the case for what we said we wanted, what the president's budget reflects, and we'll see how it comes out. I mean, as the old saying goes, and you've all heard it, the president proposes and the Congress dispose.
If I could just ask a follow-up. During the course of the debate yesterday, Senator Warner suggested, and he had earlier, that the department had in effect tried to go around the QDR process, to make a major force structure decision outside the QDR process. Could you just respond to that?
I would say that that's not I don't believe that was the intent of proposals that we made in the budget with respect to shipbuilding. We will certainly be continuing to look at the array of capabilities in the QDR. But that's certainly the chairman's interpretation, and he's entitled to his interpretation. It was not the intent of the budget that we put together. In fact, there were specific things that we said when we submitted the budget that we would defer to discussion in the QDR. Strike capability, for example, was one of them. So it was certainly not the intent of anybody here to go around a process. That process happens every 4 years, and in the meantime, we do have to make decisions on long-term budgets and programs, and this decision with respect to shipbuilding and the ship program generally was a decision that the Secretary of the Navy and ultimately the Secretary of Defense and the President thought was the right decision. So, but the chairman has his views. The amendment is what it is. We'll continue to work with the committees in both houses as they go into conference, and as I said, the President's budget is the budget that we hope comes out at the other end.
A couple of international arms-related questions on two separate subjects. What's the latest decision on whether the Pentagon will support the Paris Air Show in June? I ask this because 2 years ago, the Pentagon's less than full participation was seen as a snub at the French. Has the Secretary made a decision to support the show this year?
Well, I don't know what full is, and therefore whether somebody's definition of full will be what we end up doing. I just simply don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Do you? I mean, what's full versus...
Levels of airplane. I'm not going to get into all
okay.
that, but levels of aircraft...
Well, then maybe I'm not going to be able to get into the answer if I don't understand the question. Well, there's been no... I mean, first of all, we're at war. There is stress on the force, and so we're always looking for ways to minimize the stress on the force. And there's indeed a number of initiatives going on to minimize stress on the force, including we're looking at exercises and things like that. Do we want to keep doing these things? So it's possible that people will make a decision to do things that may affect that. But there's been no general guidance on the Paris Air Show, and I would imagine that the people that choose to participate in that will participate at some level in which it seems appropriate. There's been the Secretary hasn't issued any guidance one way or the other.
Is that in the works, though?
Is what in the works?
Is some kind of guidance?
I don't think so. I think it'll be something that people will be expected to use their best judgment, and if there's representation that takes place, wonderful, and people will do their best to make sure that they do that in a way that doesn't affect ongoing operations, et cetera, the way we operate.
Second, unrelated, but an international security airplane issue.
Uh-huh.
To what extent has Israel been frozen out temporarily of the Joint Strike Fighter program? There were reports last week citing unnamed officials using all sorts of verbs that they've been restricted, suspended.
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't know, and I couldn't use, I don't know anything about the words you're using, but the fact is that Israel is a security cooperation partner in the Joint Strike Fighter program. That's unchanged, and our commitment to sell the Joint Strike Fighter to Israel is unchanged as well. But there's some types of technology and information that at the moment we're not comfortable sharing while some issues can be worked out, and those issues are being worked out in a bilateral fashion.
Between Israel and the United States on the Joint Strike Fighter?
As I understand it, yes, while we work out the understanding between us and Israel, they remain a partner in the program, but as we develop this program, there are some types of technology and information that we're not comfortable sharing until we can resolve some of these issues. But there's an expectation that they can be resolved.
Who Israel in turn might share that with.
That's the concern. The question is, what can we share with Israel? And there's some technology and information that we're not while we work this out.
But specifically, on a day-to-day relationship right now in the Joint Strike Fighter program, are there restrictions on what the Israelis are receiving?
I'm not sure I can say I'm not equipped to say any more than what I've just told you. which is that there are some technology and information that we're not comfortable sharing until we can work out some of these issues.
Is there a similar situation with
Do we
each
have any,
other?
if there's any more that we can say to the,
China concerns, is that correct, Larry?
I don't have anything more for you than what I just gave you. Okay.
Is there a unique in this case as a JSF partner?
I don't know, and I'll try and find out. They're not unique in the sense that they are a security cooperation partner in the Joint Strike Fighter. There are other countries in that category.
These issues, do you mean issues of who in fact Israel might share technology with? Is that the issue?
I think that's the nature of the issues. In the back.
May I ask a question about Spain? I'm a Spanish correspondent. My name is Eusebio Val. The Spanish defense minister is coming to Washington in a few days to speak to Secretary Rumsfeld. Obviously, there were tensions between two countries because of the withdrawal of the troops from Iraq. There seem to be some problems now with sales of weapons to Venezuela. How would you define the military relationship right now?
Well, there are a range of bilateral relationships that we have with Spain. Spain is a NATO ally, and I don't have anything more to add to comments that we've made about decisions that the Spanish government has made over the last year or so. But Spain remains a NATO ally. They remain a country in which the United States has a lot of bilateral interests and relationships, and we take these things kind of as they come. And there is a meeting coming up. So. Okay. I'll take one more question. Sure.
Can you clarify, you said the capability of the insurgency seems to be declining and they're focusing on bigger headline-grabbing attacks.
I didn't say that with a certainty. I said it as it is. There are some people that believe that may be the case, but we're going to continue to evaluate it on a day-to-day basis.
Square with an uptick in the number of attacks. They
That's
seem
a
to be
fair
doing
question.
the big attacks as well as a lot of small ones.
It's difficult to tell if that's a trend or if that's just what's happened in the last week or two. But there are people that pay attention to this on a daily basis and change techniques and procedures accordingly. So as I said, we are fully into this. The Iraqi security forces at about 155,000 or so are getting better all the time. And I would say if you look at the grand sweep of the last 2 years, both in terms of the capability of the Iraqi security forces and the effectiveness of the insurgency, both of those is going in a direction that commanders, for the most part, looking at time and not day-to-day basis, are comfortable with.
All right, what about
Thanks a lot,
the
folks.
PACE nomination? The PACE.
That's
the chair of
White House decision. We'll let the White House make the announcement.
Thank you.
Back